Hello there, this is MTG Degree, and today we're talking about something a little bit different, a little bit hypothetical. Now, there are new rules added to Magic all the time. Every time a new mechanic comes out, rules have to be added. The meld mechanic, new rules. Any mechanic, pretty much, new rules. And so, I thought to myself, we add a lot of rules so that we can play new sets and stuff. But what about the most basic things that happen in Magic? Can any of them be made better? And I did come up with one. The thing that I think that we should improve on are the rules regarding shuffling. Now, if you look at shuffling on the comprehensive rules document, you actually find amazingly little. There's very little there. Nothing's telling you what kind of shuffling is allowed, what kind of shuffling is not really allowed. There's really no guide. All that it says is that you have to provide a randomized deck after shuffling that neither you or your opponent know the location of the cards within the deck. Now, why is this a problem? Well, I can think of two reasons. One of them is very simple. When you see shuffling, there are a lot of types of shuffles that just aren't that useful. Like this one is basically not doing much, and I've shown in another video that this type of shuffle can be used in order to get cards from the bottom of the deck to the top of the deck in order to stack your deck. And there are all sorts of shuffling tricks. You can do crazy stuff, pulling from the middle, nonsense. So when you see your opponent across from you doing all this crazy voodoo, most of it, 99.9% of the time, your opponent is just doing all of these random shuffles that just make them feel good. They make them think, yeah, this feels random. We all have our sort of tics. I'll tell you how I used to shuffle. I used to shuffle by doing, like 5 mashes or so. Then I'd do a split into 4 piles, and then I'd do the whole deck that way. And then I'd take those piles, put them back together, mash like 5 more times, do a couple of these, then cut it in half, and then hand it to my opponent. Now, I have quoted some bad math that I saw elsewhere in a previous video. However, the amount of shuffles that you need to randomize your deck, assuming that it's a good solid shuffle, is 7. 8 is basically overdoing it a little bit. So what if we made it so that the rules of Magic, that you shuffle between 8 and 10 times, mashing or riffle shuffling only. Now, the great thing about this is a lot of the shuffling techniques that people use to cheat will just be eliminated. You can't do a lot of them with just mashing and riffle shuffling, especially if mash shuffling is defined as lifting the bottom half and then bringing it over the top edge. If you do it over the top edge, then you can't just keep a card on top by going below the top every time. Now, what else does it do? Well, another great thing about this change, if you were to say only do that amount of shuffles, nothing else, give it to your opponent. Well, the other great thing about this change is that it would stop competitive stalling. So let me give you an example of some competitive stalling that I have personally experienced, and I think we've all experienced something similar. So I was at a GP playing a mill deck against somebody who was playing Dredge. Now our first game, I didn't realize he was playing Dredge. I started milling him right away, and then he got the Dredge machine going, and he won the game. Then game 2, I brought in a lot of sideboard hate. I knew that I was giving people access to the graveyard, so I had some sideboard hate for those graveyards. And after game 2, he realized, man, I don't think that I can win against this mill deck. And so what he decided to do is he looked up at the clock, and then he started shuffling. Shuffle, 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 shuffle. Look up at the clock. Shuffle, 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 shuffle. Pile, shuffle. Look up at the clock. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. And then pile, shuffle again. Oh, wrong amount of cards. I didn't sideboard right. Okay, great. Let's fix that sideboarding. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Okay, pile, shuffle because I didn't count it right. Okay, great. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Draw 7 cards. oh man, these are no good, shuffle, 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 pile, shuffle, 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 shuffle. And he basically took 10 minutes shuffling and mulliganing until our game was over. And, you know, it was really scummy and it felt really terrible, especially because I saw him just looking at the clock right behind me, like every 3 seconds. Oh my god, it was so obvious. But this kind of thing would not be possible with the new rules. No pile shuffling, none of that nonsense. All you do, mash 8 to 10 times, hand it over, or riffle shuffle. So I really like that method of randomization. The other thing is it teaches people what random means. A lot of people see things like pile shuffling. I saw pile shuffling when I started playing, and I thought, you know, that makes my deck more random. It's great. So I did pile shuffling. And then only much later did I realize that it actually doesn't make your deck any more random to pile shuffle. That was just something that I saw other people do, and I made the assumption. And lots of new players are making that assumption. Now, some people may say, GG Degree, you're saying this thing about only mashing, right? Or riffle shuffling. And it makes a lot of sense. It stops the cheating. It makes it so that if somebody were to mash like more than 10 times, you could be like, hey, you're done shuffling, you know? Let's cut. But the downside is that a lot of pros, or just, you know, average people, when they're doing the pile shuffling, they're doing it to count their deck. They're saying, okay, or I would say, 60 is divisible by 4. So if I do my 4 piles, then if I end up at the end not having the same amount in each pile, then I don't have 60 cards in my deck, right? Well, that is possible, and people are really used to manipulating their decks in order to do this sort of counting thing. My other idea is to count your sideboard instead. The number of cards that you're allowed to have in your deck is 60, 15 sideboard cards, right? And anyone who's playing really seriously competitive level, they'll have 15 sideboard cards, they'll have 60 cards in their deck. And so if you just count the sideboard and it's at 15, then you know that there's 60 cards in your deck. Now, why do you know that there's 60 cards in your deck? Well, you know that there's 60 cards in your deck because at those high-level events, you're not allowed to have anything other than the 75 cards for your deck and sideboard in your deck box. No other cards whatsoever. So there can be no confusion if you're playing at those high-level events, if you're playing where they're going to be doing deck checks in the middle of events, seeing how many cards are in your deck, that kind of thing. If you're just following those rules, there's only 75 cards in your deck box. Then if there's 15 that are in your sideboard, then the other 60 are in your hands. So in conclusion, this simple shuffling rule, 8 to 10 mash or riffle shuffles, nothing else, will make it easy for beginners to know exactly what's expected when shuffling. It stops a lot of cheating because a lot of the cheating mechanisms require some sort of special shuffling. And it stops people from playing slowly, whether or not intentionally or unintentionally. I know that when I used to play and shuffle, I was just shuffling like way too much just because it felt so good and I felt like it was going to make my opening hand so great, even though my deck was already random like halfway through. What do you folk think about this idea? Would you like to see it implemented, not see it implemented? Put your opinion in the comments. I'm actually really interested in it because I'm interested in this shuffling, cheating type nonsense. And as always, I'll see you next video.